we're now talking about using K-guard in guard retention. It actually can be some of the best ways to get to K-guard when your opponent starts trying to pressure in to pass your guard. That's often when they give you a chance to get good control and feed your leg into position to start to recover and also get to K-guard. So let's have a look now. Start with Ed here. Go north-south first. We're actually going to cover 3 different areas here. Okay, so we're going to cover north-south and using my legs to pummel back from north-south and also get into the K-guard position. We'll work against under the legs passes, so if Ed starts to go under the legs, how we can start to use that to get into K-guard. And also against the leg drag. Usually if Ed's standing up, he looks to drag a leg, and I can often use that action to start to get into K. So from north-south, I have my frames here, and so I usually want to, I'm like starting from late stage. Obviously you try to capture halfway through this technique. I'm going to show you kind of from near the end of, or the worst case scenario, and building back, right? So I have frames under Ed's armpit here, and that just stops him fully closing the gap with his chest on my chest. And it's often enough that if I have my grip over his scapula and my forearms under his shoulder, that I can start to bring my knees underneath, like so, okay? So when I get my knees underneath, when I want to get to K-guard, so I'm actually thinking about attacking here as well. I want to get to K-guard. I want to stop Ed from retracting, as we've talked about before. So I don't want to just push up with my knees. I want to try to get it so my knees start to drive him forward a little bit, okay? So I'm going to change my knee, not just pushing up, but putting behind the armpit and actually pulling down on the arm to reinforce that, okay? So move back relative to me now. Okay? I'm pretty stuck to him here compared to like here, okay? Move back and it's going to disengage, okay? So I really want my knee poking up forward like that. Once I have that, and it can be either side here, I want to push up and fold my foot underneath, okay? My foot takes over the role of the knee, or it even reinforces it, okay? So I push with my knee, and my foot folds across, trying to keep my knee, then my knee's on one side of his shoulder and foot on the other. What you don't want to do is take your foot across here. I give him a gap to actually close the gap and pass. This should still stay blocked off, okay? So I'm just folding my leg across, but keeping my foot on the outside, okay? Once that's in position, I can start to almost put my ankles locked together so my knees come further through. And this is quite a strong structure to bring Ed forward, correct? So I can pull here, take my head out to the side, and work to step on that armpit and take my other leg closer to the leg. All right, so you can see I'm getting basically the positioning for K-guard, and the fact I'm stepped on his armpit still makes it difficult for Ed to retract out of the position, okay? Now, at a certain point through this, you're going to want to reach underneath the leg to attach to the leg, okay? Not too early, not while my arms are doing most of the framing, but as I start to get good positioning here, now might be a good time to start to reach towards the leg, okay? Reach as your head starts to pop it, okay? You can see actually as I bring I can't reach because he's sitting on his heels right now, but if I bring his weight forward a little, I can get that gap to reach. If you spin out to recover, now I'm actually going to have a harder time getting to K-guard because it's a long way to reach, easier to sprawl away from. I want to do that just as my head starts to pop out, okay? Once I'm reaching to that leg, I can start stepping on the armpit, climbing my foot closer to the hip so my knee ends up underneath and entering the K-guard position. So again, I get my shoulder frames with my gripping over the scapula. I want to bring my knees up, shins attached, and get my knee behind one shoulder, pushing it forward, folding my foot underneath, and attaching that, bringing my knee up to close the gap so there's no space here to pass through. From here, I'm starting to free my knee a bit more, hooking with my ankle, extending, taking my head away, connecting to the leg, and stepping on the armpit as I climb through towards K-guard. in reality, if Ed was passing around towards north-south, you might do this with more distance. I might be like here, I'm getting my legs already. You can see I'm not as far through the pass and I'm already starting to get my attack going. Against someone who passes under the legs, so Ed's going under the legs here. Often, one of the first things I'm looking to do is get my knee down to the ground and get Ed's hand above, well, I say the ground, like near the ground, and get his hand above the line of my knee, okay? So, often we look for that quite early. Ed starts to go under the legs and I start trying to free my knee, like so, okay? So I'm pushing so he doesn't control that space from here to the ground. Now, in a scenario like this, if Ed keeps going forward and keeps trying to pass, he often actually gives me access to a K-guard entry. Okay? So we can look to, once we know we're safe from the pass, once you get your knee free and you keep it down, you should feel reasonably safe. If he drives forward, it's not really going to set anything up for him. Okay? And I'm going to look, I basically just want to I want to eventually get my foot from in front of his shoulder to behind his shoulder. To do that, I need to pummel under this arm, right? So if Ed starts to drive forward, I might pull the arm, use my foot to hook, and you can see I can now pummel my leg through, and now I have access. I've got his shoulder, I can start pulling him forward and attaching to the leg. There's some different ways you might go about this. You can check out our guard retention anthology for a bit more detail on the defending the under leg pass, but if I get the knee free here, I could pummel over the top of the arm like that. Sometimes you can pummel your knee through underneath and then start to climb, getting the armpit first and exposing this space between the shoulder and the hip so I can start to climb and get into the K-guard position. The last retention to K-guard entry we're looking at is from a leg drag. Okay, so if Ed was to pull my leg across the body like this, obviously this is not good, but as he's going for that, if you see it coming, so especially from something like De La Riva, but even from an open guard, as he pulls my leg across, if I can get my other foot with the knee on the inside, foot on the outside, this can be great. It just requires me to spin towards north-south. Okay, so you can see that as my leg starts to get pulled across, if I spin myself towards north-south, I can start to shoot my knee underneath and foot to the outside. Okay. You see this a lot from something like De La Riva. Head goes 2-on-1 on my far leg. He starts to do that, spin, shoot through, and I get into the K-guard position. So with this spin, you have to have an underhook of the leg. I can't spin my hips away without that. I'm actually using my arm to help me spin. Ed's kind of assisting me. He's pulling my hips up and across like that. So I just go with it. I spin my hips away. Okay, like so. Right. You can see as I do that, I take the De La Riva hook off. Okay, if I kept the De La Riva hook, it would actually like stick me, and I'm getting put in a bad position. So as I feel that, I take the De La Riva leg off, away, and then my knee's now tucked. I can shoot my knee in. You get to the point where my foot's on one side, knee's on the other. I grab the back of the knee and I shoot through into position. So I want to have my leg down for this. So when Ed pulls, he's pulling upwards, right? Like this. This helps pull my hip up. So we go again, like so. Right. If your leg's too high and he goes like he's almost like pushing it down and across now. This doesn't give me any momentum to spin. So if he goes for that now, I'm gonna have like a difficult time getting that angle. By starting with my leg back, and he goes for the leg drag, he'll almost pull me up and into position.
Just looking at entering K-guard from retention, which is actually a very common and good time to try to enter. So as you're recovering, your opponent's pressuring in, you can often get your foot across their body. So here you can see my opponent's working towards the north-south position, which is an extremely common time to work for it. And as we do that, I've managed to pull my foot across the body. So notice the knees on one side, foot's on the other. So if I can then spin my head all the way through, I should be able to pick up this far leg, and my leg will be in position. So see that leg that I had across, that knee is going to start to work underneath. And there we are. So see the knees going underneath, foot's on the outside, and I'm now in K-guard. So again, sorry, I'll just roll that back. So north-south, put the foot across the body, knee on one side, foot on the other, spin through, and collect the leg as you do that. Similar scenario here. I was actually trying to enter, and for whatever reason, that initial entry did not work. Looks like my opponent's kind of pushed my legs away, and we end up in this north-south position. I managed to get one foot across the hip, keeping the knee flared. So you can see my opponent wants to burrow in, put their head through, but they can't because, well, if they go forward, my leg's on the outside, and I can spin my head away, okay? So you can see I use that positioning to actually bring my opponent's weight forward here, and that exposes the leg, okay? So see me using this leg and my arms, everything kind of tries to swing my opponent's weight forward to make his hips lift up. Okay, there we are, and then I can attach to the leg and get into K-guard. And then to the berimbolo. Again here, framing from north-south, foot comes across, you can see it just poking through there, and then into an entry. Okay, so these are all basically the same idea. It's going to be my right foot that I pummel. So you make sure you keep their shoulders. There's enough shoulders up with your frames. Look at that forearm frame underneath gripping onto the scapula there. And then that gives me enough room for my foot. Right, you can just see the edge of my foot here poking through now. Once my foot's there, I swing my head away and pick up the leg in the process of doing that. And this is one from under the legs. So I don't really do it from all the way in and under the legs pass, but basically once you free your legs from your knee from an under the legs pass, trying to get your knee down towards the ground and to the inside. There we go. Okay, so once my knee's right underneath here, he's still under the leg technically, but with my knee jammed in there, I have a good chance at pulling up into the K-guard position or backside 50-50.
The summary of entries into K-guard. From a kneeling position, we have closed guard, where we can get our shins in front, lock them retracting, get our hips out, prevent the crossface, work a knee underneath, foot to the outside, and get into the K-guard position. From from an open guard, 2-on-1, I want to get my foot past the hip and my hips out to the side. With a hip escape, I'm looking to pummel to win good inside positioning on this particular arm. From here, I can start to pull Ed forward as I reach for the leg, or if he's reaching for a crossface, sometimes I can start to roll through, invert, and take the leg from there. If he's sitting back and not giving me any access towards K-guard, often from there I can start working around the corner towards De La Riva, and then he'll usually step up and I take the De La Riva guard. When looking for K-guard against a kneeling opponent, if they start to sprawl, we often keep our nice high knee shield, retract our leg to the ground, make space to spin underneath. We can attack to the far leg, or to the same side leg. Against combat base, we put our foot just past the hip. From here, we have the option we want to make sure we frame and prevent our opponent getting inside position or control with an underhook. I can frame with my leg, I can move my hips to the center, forward, and roll through into K-guard. I can step on the armpit, get a reverse De La Riva hook, and spin through. Or I can start looking to transition back into De La Riva and attack from De La Riva. When Ed is standing, if I can open the space between his knee and his elbow, then I can start to scoot to the side, shoot my leg past, spin underneath, and shoot my knee in towards K-guard. If he blocks that space, then I'm usually going to look to go for De La Riva. Okay, we have options from De La Riva, obviously. One of them is that we underhook, go to shallow K-guard, which we have some options from there, or we could potentially shoot that back up into a regular K-guard, particularly that was facing. Then we have, from reverse De La Riva, I have two main options of getting to K-guard from here. I can take my leg across, reach to the knee, scoot in, and roll through to K-guard. Or I can start to invert, fold my leg across, take my original leg out, under the far armpit, and get good position. Alright, we're now working from the K-guard position. So I've essentially connected my hands, I've got my knee inside, foot on the outside, and how to get into offense from here. Alright, so we'll break this section down into a few different things. We'll go through some concepts and some strategy that we want to focus on from here. At first, we're going to go through how to get the knee from the ground up onto our stomach. Okay, so how to go from here to have the knee onto our stomach. What are we going to do to make sure that can happen? Once we have the knee on the stomach, we'll then go through our offensive options that we've got from here. Right, so there's three main things we'll look for once the knee is up. We'll either swing over and look for backside 50-50 here, where I'm going to start to usually look for heel hook or into just a 50-50 entry. We can look to go underneath into a leg entanglement, essentially into X-guard. Or I can look to pass the leg across here into 70-30 position, where I can again start looking to go to backside 50-50, or I could look to start to go towards the back, or I could look to get up and start to come on top for a sweep. Okay, so obviously we're not covering the 70-30 position, or that's a separate section. We'll show you how to get to here. We'll also cover what to do from shallow K-guard, how you can start to attack from here. Okay, so the entries into shallow K-guard, we covered a little bit earlier, but it's really covered mostly as part of the De La Riva section. Right, but once we're in this shallow K-guard, how do we start to attack from here? And lastly, we'll cover troubleshooting and retention. So when there's certain things people will do to counter once you go in towards K-guard, what can we do from there? So our general progression, we're going to get the knee, we need to get the knee onto our stomach, okay? So I need to work the knee up to the stomach. That's the next thing we'll cover is is how to do that. If he's standing, so sometimes you've entered K-guard and they're standing, then the knee's already up. Okay, so we can kind of follow on with some of the options we're about to go through anyway. But let's just go back to the knee on the stomach. So we're kind of looking to get into a position like this. And what option you look to do from here is really dependent on what you prefer in terms of your attacks. Okay, if you really like to go for leg locks, then often you're really going to look for the backside 50-50 entry. Okay, if you prefer to sweep and get on top and not play the leg lock game, you're much more likely to scoot yourself under and go towards X guard, towards getting up. Whereas if you're more looking to take the back, or potentially, so if you want to take the back, we're going to look to take it over to the 70-30. So if that's my style, I'm going to be looking to get the leg across my body to expose the back. Or potentially, you might be looking to this even if you want to go towards backside 50-50. Often it's an easier entry from going 70-30 to get back into backside 50-50. That said, you really need to have all of these options available. People can block you from going to one, and you need to mix these together if you want to have effective attacks. Let's now talk about getting the knee to the stomach. First off, where do I want the knee? I want it low down on the stomach. So I want, when I get the knee on the stomach, I want it to come up like here. I want it locked down, low stomach area. Okay, this gives me access with my legs to chop over the top. Not so low, I don't want to put it below the line of my hips. Now he can start to run, and I'll actually lose the leg if I try to attach to it. Okay, so when I bring the knee on the stomach, I want it kind of low, but not too low. I've got my leg here hooking still at the hip to kind of slow down his retreat in case he tries to retreat again. So if he tries to run away, you can see my legs kind of hooked here, assisting me as well as my arms. Right. So if you bring the leg too high, if I bring it up here, like near my shoulder line or middle of my chest, you'll see it's very hard to swing my leg over and actually chop. I won't be able to get to something like backside 50-50. I've eliminated one of the options that I wanted to go for. So when we bring put that back down, when we bring the knee up, we're kind of looking to use our hands and pull it like this. You can see I'm using my lat to close my elbow down. I should end up with my elbows really pretty much closed down next to my side, not up here where I have my elbows open. Right? So we're going to be looking to go like this. So to do this, you're going to want the leg to be light. So if Ed's got all his weight on the leg and he's leaning this way, I'm not going to be able to move the leg with my arms. I'm going to try to use my legs the best I can by pulling towards me. So I'm hooking with my foot behind the back of the shoulder. Actually, I'll just turn and show that. So it's that same leg position we used a lot with our entry. I'm going to be feeding through and hooking so I can pull forward. If I pull my knee to my chest, it brings Ed's weight forward like that. Right? So I want to, as I've connected my hands together, I want to pull Ed's weight towards me. A lot of it's going to come from this top leg. And once I've got that, I'm kind of loading him up. I can then push away with my legs this way. Okay? You can see like my knee extends out this way. So if you go back, end of the foot in, load off that way. Okay. Already Ed's, without even holding his leg, I've made his knee lift up. So if he's got heavy weight on that leg, if I can use my legs well, I can pull in and I can start making the knee lift by itself. Okay. Now, with the addition of my hands there, I can obviously guide that into really good position. It is really important that this knee does drop underneath. Again, if your knee's out here, if I do this same action, I haven't really got anywhere. In fact, I've given him a chance to go under my leg and start to pass. Okay? So I need to have my knee staying underneath like so. Okay? At a certain point, it keeps him from dropping his weight back. Okay? So here, my knee locking underneath the hips stops him dropping his weight here. If I'm staying with my knee kind of shallow like this, he drops his weight back, I might get put back to an earlier position. Now, if I'm having trouble using this action, so I try to pull in, maybe Ed's sitting back on his heels too much. Okay, so sometimes I will bring my hips up in to kind of get a bit of momentum to this. Okay, so sometimes I come in like this. Stay back, stay heavy on this side. Good. So sometimes from here, my hips come in, okay? This allows me to push him a little bit, and then as he pushes back against me to keep his balance, I get momentum to curl in and off balance. One last thing you can do, which does occasionally happen, is you can sometimes kick them. Sometimes Ed will control my leg. I didn't want this to happen, but I've got everything in position. Sometimes I step on the stomach here and I push, and notice the leg starts to, it's hard for him to keep heavy on his knee here. Okay, so we go back. If you're trying to keep up, I hold my leg, I can push and lift the knee. Okay, once I've lifted the knee, we'll talk about how to pummel this leg a little bit later, but I am looking to get back into good position and start to attack. One last option is to actually step under this armpit. This works really well if you can. Be careful swinging wide, but if you get the chance to, with your pummeling, if I can step under this near armpit, this will take his weight out. Very similar, in fact, it's a stronger action than this. If I can actually step under this armpit with the outstep of my foot, now I try and stay heavy on your leg, I can push him away and get the knee up on top of my stomach. And now we're looking at pummeling our leg into position. So what if I got my arms in position and I'm still not, like I've got my grips, I've got the leg in position as well, but I don't feel like I can pull the leg up yet. Maybe Ed's holding my leg off and I need to get my leg in position first. There's a few things we can do here. Focus on pummeling, like I want to pummel this leg in particular. It can be difficult to do from a range where he's controlling my leg. Sometimes I actually want to move my hips away. I step and I kind of invert a little bit. I step on his stomach and I make more space. Now his arms are stretched. It's easier to pummel that. Okay. Sometimes I block the tricep, come under the near armpit, so you can see that. So I block his tricep, he can't follow as I tuck my foot under and I take that armpit and get back into K-guard. Or, so it is okay to let go of the clasp you have of your hands together. Okay, occasionally, especially if he starts going towards the cross face, you might have to pummel underneath, get your head back through, and deal with that. In terms of the arm, let's just go with one arm. What I can do here, extend away, put my foot inside the forearm, and kick outwards and up on the forearm. Okay, so you cannot hold that grip. So I get my foot inside, out on the forearm, and kick out, not towards him, he'll keep hold of that and control, but out and open. Okay, you cannot keep that grip. And then I can start looking for my armpit position or potentially to the opposite armpit too. Okay, so again, we can go out. Usually to get this, you go wide, step away, make like maximum distance, so he's stretched out, pummel back in. So they go high, under, kick, I can deal with that arm, and I can start pummeling back where I want my legs. One thing I want you to be careful of is pummeling high and over the top. So it's risky for things like a leg drag or counters if I start doing this, okay, if I'm trying to step over like that. So really I don't want this wide open thing. Anytime I go, if I'm gonna bring my leg wide and open, I'm gonna be blocking to stop Ed from closing the gap. So if I wanted to come like over the top with a pummel, I want to stop him from being able to get underneath the leg, right? If you just go knee clasp and swing high, this is bad, okay? Even if I step on the hip, occasionally you'll see me do this where I'll like step on the hip to help pull the knee up, but this is still a little risky. If he manages to push my foot just past his hip, I could be in danger. It's probably something I used to do more than I do now. Now I find it much better, instead of going wide like this, to look to pummel in towards the near side and use that to off balance, or to get under this armpit. When you get under this armpit, there's no chance of a leg drag. Okay, try to leg drag from that. That's impossible. I'm like blocking this arm. Okay, he can't get underneath my leg, and he shouldn't actually really be able to pummel it through this way either. It's a really solid grip. Okay, they're coming wide towards the hip. Dangerous thing to do. Just one thing in terms of pummeling our legs, you want to often have one extended and the other one back. Okay, so I can pummel the leg best when my leg is back. So if Ed's holding onto my leg, it's very hard to pummel with both feet extended like this. He can really control that, and I can't pummel this leg. I want to have it back. Okay, now I can start to pummel. Right. If he starts to control this one, then I often want to kick with one and pull back with the other so I can pummel. So I've got like one distance maker and one circling. Okay, and often if this is really dangerous from K-guard, so like if he's really doing well, I'll often turn a little bit towards north-south to have better angle. Okay, so start pressuring him with your knee, and yeah, he's pushing my legs off. Staying side on can be dangerous. I'll often move myself a little more, my head a little more up and my hips up like this. So my head goes in, hips up, and I'll start pummeling from here. Okay, this is often a better position to start to work for that. Notice pummeling the armpit can often, so go again, pummeling to the armpit can help pummel one arm, one leg, the other leg, and then we can start to get our legs back in position. We'll have other options as well, where if one's being blocked, we'll often come underneath. If we can't come in front of the body, we're going to take our leg underneath and use that to scoot ourselves underneath our opponent. Now that we've got the leg up onto our stomach, we want to consider what our options are. One of the things that's going to determine what I go for from here is whether the knee is turned out or turned in. Okay, if the knee is turned out like this, you can try to turn it back in, but if it is out, it's going to be very difficult to enter something like a backside 50-50. Okay, I can't chop over the side. I'm going to get jammed. In fact, put myself in a very bad position trying to do that. When the knee is turned in, I have access to the back of the knee, and I can start to chop through and start to enter that position. Right. So generally, if the knee's turned in, it starts to become a very good option to go for this. If it's turned out, I'm usually looking to either scoot myself underneath towards X guard, or and then potentially feed it across the body, where I can then move my hips out and expose the back of the knee to the leg again, or I can continue to attack. Okay? Or you might start to feed the leg across early from the K-guard position. You might start looking to head across towards 70-30 here initially. Okay, so again, knee turned out, don't go for backside sit 50-50 straight away. Usually try to look to work underneath or feed the leg across your body. So how do we turn the knee in? Now this is going to be really important. We're going to talk about the knee, how do we turn the knee in? Well, there's a grip that I use when I secure the knee on top of the stomach, and it's useful for a few things actually. Okay, so I'm actually going to look to have pressure twisting Ed's knee in like this. It's very similar actually to what we do from half guard. So if I've got half guard on Ed, I want to turn his hips away. I put pressure with my hips into the knee and I drag his foot. You watch this? When I do this, it turns, you can probably see it starts to turn his hips away, and it stops Ed from being able to turn towards me if I maintain pressure at the knee and pressure at the ankle. Very similar principle is going to be applied here. I want my elbow pretty much at the ankle line. Obviously you might have to adjust if someone's really tall or short, but try to make sure you're getting the pressure to turn their knee in. So my elbow at the ankle line, and I want my hands close to the knee, like so, with my forearm dragging the knee in. Okay, so I'm going to be able to create this tension here that rotates the knee. Turn your knee out, Ed. So I want to be putting pressure like this to turn it in. Notice it's kind of the inside of my forearm here towards the elbow. not over the elbow, so I haven't got the whole elbow on top. I want the elbow still on this side of the knee. It's going to be like rolling back towards my hip. This is a strong action, like a rowing action. As my other elbow opens, like so, okay? I want the hands here, we'll talk about this later, but I want the hands to be close to the knee. It's going to, obviously it helps with this particular twisting action, but it's also going to help stop him running away. Now, so I've got this ability here to rotate, and this is going to be particularly accentuated if I can start to move my body underneath. Okay? If I can move my body under, I can really rotate Ed's knee. This is going to be great for getting his hands to the mat. So not only does this grip expose the knee when I want to shoot over towards backside 50-50, but even if I go towards X guard, so let's say Ed stands up, and I want to go into X guard, I can get his hands to the mat using this grip. So I shoot under and I rotate his leg, forcing his hands to the mat. This is great for using X guard sweeps and starting to get up. Okay. So that brings me to another really useful part of this grip, which is stopping your opponent running away. Okay. If I start to put this pressure and Ed starts to run away, I'm really attached, and I'll show you how this works. My shoulder is pushing up and my hands are pulling back at the knee. So it's like I am putting I'm like levering his knee up. So now wherever he goes, he's going to pull my body with him. Okay? It's very hard to disengage from that. Okay? If we were to do this, for example, on the shoulder, here, I don't have that same pressure. Straighten your leg. I can't bend the knee. I don't have that same pressure. He can run and free the leg. Okay? So I want it actually on my elbow, not on my shoulder, and bending it down like this. Okay? Pulling back against the knee. Okay? Try to run it. It's going to pull me back. Okay? You can change that. It's actually very similar to the grip, how you would do an underhook in wrestling. So I can actually even keep this, let go, get up on my right hand, and if Ed was to run away here, this pressure here with my left arm will keep me attached for something like an X-guard sweep. Okay. So you end up with a similar type of grip to how you would do an underhook in wrestling, where you actually hook under the elbow above the shoulder and you pull your elbow backwards. And if Ed tries to row his elbow back, he's kind of stuck. And it's hard to free that. Whereas when you underhook too deep, if you reach too deep, you often allow them room to either drop their elbow back or circle over the top. Okay? This shoulder forward, elbow back, and pushing down tends to be a really strong grip. So when you get this grip, a reminder, you get your elbow at the ankle, forearm across the inside, connect your hands high and close to the leg, and try to connect your chest pretty much to the side of the inside of the shin as you twist underneath. Okay, so we're pulling down like this, putting good pressure on the back of the knee, right? Shoulder forward, so he can't slip his foot up towards the top of my shoulder. Okay, I don't want the foot coming up here, where, as you can see, you can pretty better see here, there's a bit more space for him. If you try to run here, he can move that, okay, compared to here, try and run now, and I'm really stuck to it. Also, having the foot lower down, like kind of across your chest, allows you to twist. Okay, so if Ed's standing up, I can really pivot through that and put pressure to make him turn. On the shoulder, you will not be able to do that. If you want to stay up, I can't force his knee in. Here, slipping the shoulder down to the elbow, getting my chest attached and moving my hips under, I really can. So this grip was particularly good for rotating the knee in and giving me room to shoot my leg over. But in actual fact, if I keep my hand at the knee when I want to chop over to something like a backside 50-50, my arm will actually get in the way of my leg. Okay, so although this is a good grip, when we're going for the backside 50 entry, we just want to understand how to stop them fleeing. Okay, because I'm going to have to take my arm away a little bit, and I'm expecting one potential reaction is Ed tries to run and free his knee, and I don't want that to happen, right? So to stop that, I'm really going to want to pinch tight. I want to close any gap here off onto the ankle, like so, okay? And imagine, similar thing with my shoulder coming forward over the foot. There's this big foot here that I want to make it a very small gap that it has to fit through. So if I start to lock in here and squeeze this tight, pushing my chest forward and squeezing my arm back, if Ed tries to run now, he should really be stuck. He should have to pull me with him, and it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so if you think about your forearm bone, try to make it so that jams behind the Achilles. I don't care if it's high, but make it so at some point, if he was to start to free his foot, his heel is actually going to be a block and it's stuck. And also, because my shoulder is forward, his foot or his toes will get stuck on my shoulder as well. Okay, with my shoulder, if I had my shoulder back and I was squeezing like this, he can probably free that. I don't know if you can see it. So here I'm just using my chest. I want to have my shoulder coming into it as well. That really closes off the gap. So hand back of the forearm back of the Achilles, shoulder pushing into the top of the foot, close to the ankle, and this should secure the grip. So as we go from our kind of rotation torque sort of action, as I start to chop over, I'll change to really hugging tight with my shoulder pressuring in. We're just quickly talking about where to place this foot, when it should go down and underneath, and when it should be pummeling in front. Okay. So a lot of it will have to do with your opponent's positioning. So for example, if Ed's turned his knee out and I don't feel like I have good ability to turn it back in, then it usually means he's facing. It's hard for him to do this and also have this leg, this left leg out of the way. Okay, whereas if he puts this knee in, he can usually step that left leg back really far. I've got no ability to reach his leg now with my leg, but I've got ability to chop over the top. Okay, whereas if he turns this out, I can usually reach the inside leg. Okay, so generally, if the knee's out, this leg's actually looking to pummel underneath, while my K-guard leg is looking to make distance to stop Ed from closing the gap. So see, I'm actually stepping with my K-guard leg. Sometimes this leg will step and push. Sometimes it will be more hooked and trying to get my knee under. Okay. So then you've got the time where Ed's leg is turned in. From here, I'm usually looking to, let's see, forward and pressuring. Yeah. So I'm usually looking to get either a hook on the far armpit, the near armpit, and start to off balance. Or if I get a good enough angle, I want to then chop over the top to the back of the knee. Okay. And that's when we can start doing our full backside 50 inch. In terms of this K-guard leg, so obviously we can push with that leg. I can actually step with my foot to push away. This is going to protect me against any sort of foot lock that Ed tries to do. He tries to foot lock this leg. Then I always can just push him away. It's not going to work because of my K-guard leg. I need to keep my knee below the line of his knee to save myself from being caught in some sort of leg lock from Ed. If he pulls that one up, if my knee line comes too high, that's dangerous for me. So I'm always looking to keep my knee underneath. And actually that's going to help the knee coming underneath, which is the other main role, is going to help bump Ed forward. So if he's pressuring in and I get my knee behind, you can see when I use this knee, it can bring his weight forward. Okay. So it's like I've stepped the outstep of my foot on his stomach, and then pressuring out with that allows me to push in with my knee and start to tilt him forward, getting his hands towards the mat. The other thing this leg might do is help with the pummeling. So if Ed's kind of reaching out towards this, both hands maybe, sometimes you can even step on the armpit here to aid you to get this back and then come back through. Okay, so I'm really wanting this space here open. So from the K-guard, you want to understand what your opponent's looking to do as well. So person on top, there's a bunch of options they've got to try to defend. Most common is trying to push your legs off. So obviously just blocking the far leg is very common. Often people will try to push just the near leg off. Some people will try to go both. Usually then they try to go towards north-south to try to pass and push your feet away. That can be effective. Some people will try to duck under the leg, hooking like this. Usually, if they can get this is actually quite a solid defense, particularly if they can come off under with their hand as they do this as well, so they can get their hand under your leg and reach under through here. You get some people who just try to run away. You get K-guard and they turn, they try to straighten their leg and free their knee. And you get some people who try to counter with like leg drags and berambolas too. This can be really effective, and we need to know how to deal with that. So they might look to step their foot inside and start going for something like a crab ride. Or they might look to try to go under the leg, jam their knee, and start sitting in towards some sort of leg drag or potentially back into a crab ride. You'll get some people who look to go for foot locks. So some people try to attack this top leg and sit back in for some sort of leg lock from there. And you get people who might even look to pull the near leg up and try to attack that if you are not having your leg in the right position. And lastly, some people will try to go under your legs the standard way. So instead of going with my left arm, some people might try to reach under and pull your knee up, try to pass this way.